Alright, so today's lecture goes into a little more detail on work and employment, and your assignment goes into greater detail on finding the right job. But 4 questions that are really important in terms of thinking about this are: what do you really want to do? What are you good at? What do you enjoy? And how can you kind of combine your abilities and your desires with the kinds of opportunities that are available for you? So you'll explore that a lot more in your assignment. There's a video that you're going to watch about emerging adult workers, and we do see some differences between emerging adult workers and older workers. Emerging adult workers are less likely to see work as central to their life. They kind of want a balance between work and life. And they expect work to be rewarding, but want this work-life balance. They appear to be kind of less committed, where they're willing to do fewer hours and work less overtime, but it's not necessarily because they're lazy. There's a lot of evidence that this has to do with the fact that their work is less secure, so they're not really willing to give up their life for a company that may or may not lay them off. A lot of emerging adults also report that it's really important for them to do something that gives back or helps them make a difference in society. But they don't expect that job stability, but they end up having this kind of mismatch between what they want, which is kind of respect to grow as a person and to continue working, but they tend to not really have a great sense of the qualifications that they need for professional jobs. They don't kind of logically pursue opportunities. They kind of jump from job to job. Some of this can come from kind of the way parents have raised their kids, that you can do anything you want, and the reality is you need to be prepared in order to kind of reach for those higher goals. This figure just shows kind of changing worker values from 1976 to 2004. You can see things like leisure time has increased in terms of the amount of time people spend, where work centrality, so how important that is to your identity, has decreased. And there's less overtime, and workers are less likely to work even if unnecessary. So there's less of this commitment to work. In emerging adulthood, we see lots of job turnover. It's not always voluntary, and it's also not always leading to a better job. So it's kind of important to remember that. But from 20 to 25, emerging adults change jobs approximately once a year. In later emerging adulthood, from 25 to 30, we see changes every 3 years. And generally, what we see is that good wages and promotions kind of early on at a company do predict success. But often emerging adults are switching jobs so fast that they don't stay at one job long enough to get that success. One of the difficulties when emerging adults are unemployed is that they're not really connected to services. So once they're out of school, if they're not working or not part of the military, they're not really kind of connected to social services, the safety nets that might be out there. They're not aware of them. This figure does a nice job showing kind of the transition between a job and a career. What you can see is younger emerging adults are much more likely to be working in a place that they say is just a job, versus a stepping stone to their career versus an actual career, whereas by the time you get to late emerging adulthood, 30 to 34, most of them, or getting close to most of them, are in a career or a stepping stone to a career as opposed to just a job. Okay, so this figure is showing the changes in requirements for a selection of jobs from whether they require a bachelor's degree. And what we're finding is that more and more employers are actually requiring people to have a college degree, even if the job doesn't require it. A lot of employers say that it makes people look more career-oriented as opposed to just looking for a paycheck. And what's happening is, since more and more people are going to college, those who don't go to college look increasingly unmotivated and essentially look worse, even though they may have the same skills as somebody who got the job 20 years ago. And we do see that unemployment without a bachelor's degree is about twice the unemployment rate with a bachelor's degree. So if we look at these, one of the biggest changes, so in 2007, 12% of dental lab technician jobs required a bachelor's degree. In 2012, 33% did. So all of these careers, small portions of them required them in 2007, and just 5 years later, a much larger portion did. So a lot of these changes happen as a result of the assumptions by employers that those without college degrees are unmotivated or not good workers. Also, with a bad economy, it could be a way to narrow down a huge pool of applicants. If you have 100 applicants, if you say they need a college degree, then you eliminate some of them. Now, there's an important point to note that some companies are worried about hiring college graduates for jobs that they're overqualified for, in that they might leave when the economy gets better. So that's kind of the flip side, but a lot of employers are really considering a college degree as kind of the bare minimum. However, we often forget that there's lots of good paying careers that don't require a college degree. So for example, the average electrician makes $5,000 more a year than the average college graduate. So this article is about apprenticeships for training. And this was actually an electric company that partnered with a community college that was offering associate's degrees. And after graduation, about 90% of their associate's degrees graduates got a job there. So it's kind of a neat story and a neat idea, and I've posted the actual article on Moodle if you want to read it. Okay, another important aspect of career development is occupational identity. So we talked earlier, and your book covers this idea of Marsh's identity exploration, where you have the 4 stages of identity exploration based on whether people have made a commitment to an identity and experienced a crisis and explored options. So this is from a study that looked at the factors that predict the development of occupational identity in college. A supportive family is associated with identity achievement, so being more close to your family means you do more exploration. This is kind of related to attachment theory. If you think about kind of emerging adults can use their family as a secure base to explore from. Emerging adults from higher income families do more or are more likely to have identity achievement. This may be because people from low income families kind of perceive themselves to have limited opportunities for career goals, so they don't do a lot of exploration. Also making an early decision about a major, so if you come in and decide before taking too many credits, predicts greater occupational identity achievement. Race, so Latinos have highly emotionally supportive families, and they're actually more likely to have occupational identity achievement. In contrast, looking at people who haven't achieved their occupational identity, remember that those in moratorium haven't decided yet and are still exploring. These people are more likely to have intrusive families. They tend to spend a lot of time evaluating career options, but they wait a really long time to actually make a decision. Those in foreclosure about their occupational identity remember they're making decisions before they've done exploration. So it seems like a sense of kind of emotional support leads to kind of premature decision making. So if their families are kind of intrusive and controlling, students are either kind of confused or kind of disengaged from career decision making. So they say, all right, this is what my parents want to do. This is what I'm going to do. We also sometimes see people who made early decisions about their careers being in foreclosure, where if they made a commitment, they feel like they have to do that. In terms of diffusion, you see diffusion where they've done neither exploration or made a commitment in people who have intrusive or controlling families or have kind of early separation from their families, and so they have kind of other stuff that's going on that might take the place of their career exploration. Okay, so this looked at things that predict patterns of knowledge about work in college students, and really they compared seniors to first-year students. And seniors in college are much more focused on applying their studies to career and work. This makes sense because they're about to graduate and they're starting to think about the real world. First-year students are much more focused on kind of their classes and selecting a major. And so this emphasis on occupation and training is important, and we need to kind of make that link between what's going on in the classroom and this occupational decision making. Work experience is also really important, so students who have work experience have more kind of self-clarity and more knowledge about what they want to do. So in terms of volume of work or how much they work, both having full and part-time work experience predict more knowledge about the world, but full-time is more likely to have more knowledge about careers. Breadth has to do with the number of jobs and employers, and this actually didn't predict the development of career decision-making. And then relevance did not predict career identity development, but the number of jobs did predict career decision efficacy. So basically, doing a variety of work doesn't necessarily lead you to have more knowledge, but doing more work in terms of volume and the amount of time does. They also found gender differences where women were more likely than men to collect information about work and seem to have more knowledge about occupation and training. So women seem to have done more career exploration. Okay, another component or another kind of strategy to help students select careers is an unpaid internship. Sometimes there are paid internships, but more frequently they're unpaid. This is not from formal research. This is from an article in the New York Times. And unpaid internships are really interesting. They're great career experience, but what happens is students are working for free, or sometimes they're even paying because they have to pay to get the college credit that they get from the experience. So there's a fair amount of controversy about this because what's happening is for-profit companies are benefiting from poor college students who are essentially paying to work there. So some people say, well, this is kind of the price emerging adults have to pay to succeed. Others say this is entirely unfair. And so there's a lot of kind of concerns about exploitation in this. Among others, college advisors can't necessarily monitor the workplace. So lots of issues with unpaid internships, but they do give career exploration opportunity. And finally, this is kind of looking at the best jobs in today's economy. Really the top tier of workers have kind of the brains or the ideas. The idea people are what is valued. So those who are coming up with knowledge or creativity related jobs are the best paid. The next best paid and most value are production. Production jobs used to be the best paid, but now there's this kind of threat of automation and outsourcing, and they're getting less and less well paid to keep up with competitors. And finally, the bottom tier is service jobs. These are the fastest growing but lowest paid, and these jobs tend to be less secure. A lot of times we see emerging adults starting their work in the service sector because there's a lot of part-time jobs and temporary employment, and then they may eventually move up. So that's it for this lecture.